Hello, welcome back. Welcome back to SCP the Spider. I Spider.
The real estate agent celebrated his success. He had succeeded in closing a long-awaited deal, selling a certain house with a rather bad reputation. Superstition and cautious people tend to avoid buying a house in which someone either died an unnatural death or went mad. Since agents cannot simply silence talk of such facts, they're forced to reduce the price. But even this does not completely eliminate the trouble encountered with such housing. The agent had gotten the house with paranormal activity. By some strange coincidence, several people living in the place had lost their eyes. They not only went blind, however, but literally lost their eyeballs. The point isn't even that necessarily, but the fact that several victims had terrible stories to tell. They claimed that a creature had ripped out their eyes. Having such a history to it, it was not easy to sell the house, but the agent was lucky. And there were some skeptics who chose a profitable deal over believing ghost stories. The new homeowners employed a cleaning company to prepare the house for their move. One worker was vacuuming while wearing headphones, listening to his favorite music and dancing along. The man paid no attention to the dead flies, spider legs, and other debris lying on the floor. After all, why should he? He saw nothing that could be found elsewhere in a house which lacked tenants for years on end. He was a little worried about rumors and ghost stories, but he had heard about this house several times before. Therefore, when he felt a strange pressure in his eye, he stopped somewhat unwillingly, even giggling to himself a bit. When the cleaner looked in the mirror, however, he no longer felt this was any laughing matter, but by now it was too late. A powerful vacuum cleaner had sucked up everything into a large container. So some live insects got in there, but more often than not, it was just what was left of them. No one could have noticed that the long spider legs were actually moving inside the vacuum cleaner. They slowly came together and merged into a kind of bodiless spider, and so the janitor only noticed it when it was already in his very eye. I must admit, SCP-525 is a pretty nasty object. First, because it's some kind of arachnid, and secondly, because it rips people's eyes out. Ugh, how disgusting. Other than that, eye spiders are not that dangerous. As you can imagine, SCP-525 resembles an arachnid in appearance. The threat of the object was assessed to be at a Euclid level and was sent to be contained in Warehouse Zone 23. The fact is that in its inactive state, the object is, per se, disassembled. Moreover, within a single room there can be no more than 6 components at a distance of at least 50 feet away from each other, and each of these samples must be contained in a separate container. The only exceptions are authorized experiments. Even so, only D-Class personnel are allowed direct contact with the object. All scientific personnel are required to wear safety glasses during tests. SCP-525 is composed of the individual parts of an unknown anomalous arthropod. Each limb extends anywhere from 4 to 6 inches in length. Like its closest genetic relative, the brown recluse spider, its legs are covered by multiple hairs. And despite their anomalous nature, they're just as fragile. All the components of SCP-525 have strong hooks at their base. These are of natural origin, if in this case it's possible to put it in that way at all. Now, allow me to explain their purpose. SCP-525's legs remain inactive until 8 pieces are gathered nearby. In order for the components of the object to establish a connection, they must be at least 2 feet away from each other, if not closer. When this happens, all the components come to life and are combined into a single system. A spider without a body. This particular state of the object was designated 525-1, but that's not all. No one wants to feel small, even the anomalous eye spiders. And so this living set of legs heads out to find the missing components. I'm sure you can probably guess what that might be. After the legs come together, the object begins to move much faster as a whole than when it was merely individual components. Scientists have conducted a series of experiments with the object in different types of animals. It turned out that medium to large mammals, and of course humans, are suitable for SCP-525's intent. Birds, fish, and reptiles, however, are ignored by the object. The experiment with the crocodile was particularly fascinating. But first, let's cover how the object goes about finding a suitable victim. In its intermediate state, 525-1, the object gets to the eye of a living creature and is located strictly in the center above the eyeball. 2 pairs of legs hold the eyelid so that the victim cannot close the eye, and the rest of the limbs slice the optic nerves and blood vessels. The finer details of this process are classified. Obviously, this is due to an anomalous force, since the fragile spider legs themselves are incapable of performing such a procedure. The object extracts the eye with extreme caution, and it's here that the hooks at the base of each leg come into play. They extend out and pierce the shell of the eye, attaching themselves evenly, and so it becomes a sort of eye spider. It would seem that this is how the entity comes into a complete form. Still, it appears the heart of it all is in the collective intelligence of the individual components combined, or something to that effect. During an experiment with 525-1 and a crocodile, the object showed interest in the reptile, but during attempts to extract the eye, it was only able to blind the animal. After this failure, SCP-525 no longer reacted to reptiles. The same behavior was displayed even by those components of the object that did not actually participate in the crocodile experiment. This points to the fact that the entity is actively learning and is able to transfer its knowledge to all existing units. This particular mechanism has not been studied yet, but there's still no evidence that SCP-525 is sapient exactly. But it's known for sure that it reproduces. If, after removing the eyes, the entity is not disturbed, then it lays eggs, or something similar to them, in the empty eye socket. Then the specimens disappear. After attaching itself to the eyeball, the object becomes slower, since its new borrowed body part makes it difficult to move. Also from this point on, SCP-525 shows no interest in any living creatures encountered afterwards. It's not clear why the entity needs an eye, but it certainly does not use it for its intended purpose. The object ignores any visual stimuli. Deprived of its natural environment, the organ begins to lose fluid and dry out, thus acquiring a brownish tint like that of the object's limbs. And after about 2 to 3 weeks, the spider detaches from the withered eye and goes in search of a new one. The meaning of such a resettlement is still undetermined. However, it's worth noting that some of the data on SCP-525 is classified. Perhaps the eye is for the object what a clamshell is to a hermit crab, providing a place to hide. Although this is rather unlikely. The sea dweller uses an inconspicuous and sturdy shell for cover. The eye running across the floor on spider legs is most certainly anything but invisible, let alone a way for it to have a reliable shelter. My guess is that SCP-525 uses the eye as a source of energy somehow. The fact that it's in the victim's eye socket, and that a new generation of anomalous spider paws develops, also supports this opinion. Dr. Weiss conducted an experiment with a D-Class employee. The object was allowed to remove the person's eye, and was not disturbed until it had departed. The scientist monitored the victim for 4 weeks. Just after the initial examination of the wound, actually, eggs were already found in the oculomotor muscles, similar to those of toads, except opaque. 3 of them were separated from the tissues and sent to the laboratory for research, and the D-Class employee himself was put into quarantine. During the 2nd week of observation, nothing unusual was recorded. The employee's wound healed as it should. The eggs of SCP-525 in his eye socket became slightly enlarged. However, those that were retrieved failed to develop under laboratory conditions. By the 3rd week of the experiment, though, the D-Class employee began to complain about some discomfort. He noticed an increasing sensation of pressure in the eye socket and started demanding a mirror, which of course was not provided to him. By this time, the wound was completely healed, and the laid eggs were covered with muscle tissue. At the beginning of the 4th week, the D-Class employee could no longer endure it, and attempted to tear apart the object's nest in his eye. He was prevented from doing so, however, and on the 24th day following the start of the test, 11 SCP-525 components hatched. Immediately thereafter, they began to merge. But apparently, it did not appear to be a regular specimen, since further research protocol data is classified. Still, whatever happened after the hatching of a new batch of SCP-525's components was not scary enough to change SCP-525's containment or class. It turns out there may be a huge number of anomalous spider legs, and it's possible that the Foundation does not have all the specimens in containment. They can even be in the same room, but in different corners and therefore will not interact. At least until one day, when the necessary conditions for the assembly of SCP-525 are created. For all its creepiness, it would appear that the object is rather easily disarmed. This is indicated by its legs, fragile nature, and the fact that it begins to move quickly after transforming into 525-1, but not lightning fast necessarily. Also, there's no evidence that the creature has any cognitive effect on its victims. So it may be enough to simply crush the object like a normal spider. In that case, the following question arises. How can you be sure that one of the spiders you crushed was not actually an instance of SCP-525? Hey, relax. Except for those of you who have one-eyed acquaintances. Amnestics, you know? But if by some miracle you weren't tracked down and processed, and you know something about SCP-525's tricks, do let us know in the comments.
And that's about it, guys. See you guys next time. Bye.